Namaste, hope you're doing well. Welcome to the first episode of the Pharma Cafe. It is an initiative to enhance the awareness of the students and also re-emphasize the importance of pharma fraternity for the health and well-being of people around us. My name is Priyamvada Jain. I'm a regulatory affair professional, work with a pharmaceutical company. Have you ever wondered why regulatory affairs is so important for each and every pharmaceutical company and it is an integral part of every pharmaceutical organization? I certainly did as a student. To get to know the answer of this question, we have to go back in time. Let me tell you a story. The year was 1901 and the place was St. Louis, America. The place was under the pandemic of diphtheria. Now, diphtheria antitoxin were prepared using horse serum. There was a horse named Jim who got infected with tetanus. Now, what happened is the tetanus contaminated antitoxin accidentally was administered to people, which led to the death of 13 kids in St. Louis. A similar shocking incident also happened in Camden, New Jersey, America, where the smallpox vaccine contaminated with tetanus, administered accidentally to people, again led to the death of 9 kids. Because of these shocking incidents, a public uproar happened, which ultimately led to the birth of the Biological Control Act in 1902. Which ultimately gave government some control over the processes and the manufacturing practices used to manufacture the biological product. So this is how the Biological Control Act came to light in 1902. Sometimes what happens is when we feel that everything is under control, something happens which agitate public emotions. Something like this also happened in America between 1902 to 1906 because of the two works. The first was a study was done by Dr. Harvey Wiley, who was the chief chemist of US Department of Agriculture. He did a study on 12 volunteers by giving them food loaded with colors and preservatives. He called this group as a poison squad. And around the same time, a book was published by a journalist, Upton Sinclair. The book was about the lives of immigrants living in America and facing harsh living conditions. However, what caught public attention was the shocking disclosure of unsanitary practices in the meat industry. When both of these work came to the light, they again lead to the agitation of public emotions. And because of this, two acts were passed on 30th June 1906. The one was Meat Inspection Act and another was the Pure Food and Drug Act. This is how these two acts came to light in 1906. Now let's try to understand the Pure Food and Drug Act or the Wiley Act. So this act prohibited the interstate trade and sale of food and drug which is adulterated or misbranded. Now what is adulterated or misbranded meant at that time? It meant that the product should not contain any ingredient, potentially harmful drug or addictive drug in a quantity greater than stated on the label. It also required the active ingredients to be placed on the label, and drugs should also follow the quality and purity standards which are established by the pharmacopoeia, which is USP and NF. There were no analogous standard for the foods. However, foods were prohibited to contain any material which can be called as a substitute to food, which is harmful, decomposed, or conceal the damage. If you look at it, so you'll notice that till now the major emphasis of the law was on the labeling of the product and there was no pre-approval required till this time. Till now, The focus of the law was primarily on the labeling of the product with respect to the ingredients and their identity. All the government raids led only to the small fines and confiscation. Then came Shirley Amendment, which is triggered by a very interesting incident. So there was an inventor and entrepreneur, Dr. Johnson, who came up with a product, Dr. Johnson's mild combination treatment for cancer. When government raided him, he did not fall in line with the government's ruling and took the state to Supreme Court. And Supreme Court in 1911 ruled that the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 does not prohibit false and misleading therapeutic claims on the label. To overcome this ruling, government enacted Shirley Amendment in 1912, which prohibited false and misleading therapeutic claims on the label. However, this was not enough as there was no emphasis on the safety of the drug products and efficacy was way far off. FDA pointed out the various shortcomings which led to the other tragedies like there was a product by the name of Banbur which was a worthless cure for diabetes, then Wilhide which falsely claimed the treatment of tuberculosis and other pulmonary diseases, Lashlier which was an eyelash dye, caused severe damage to the eyes of many females in USA, and one confirmed case of permanent blindness was also reported. Another example is Mrs. Willow's soothing syrup, which was for the teething and the colicky babies, laced with morphine, killed many infants in the USA. Then comes the year 1937 when sulfanilamide elixir tragedy happens, where S.E. Messengill and Company dissolved sulfanilamide in diethylene glycol, which resulted in a fatal mixture, killed more than 100 people across USA. To overcome all these issues, the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act was passed in 1938. Now, this new act had the following key features. The control extended to cosmetics and medical devices. A new system of drug regulation started that a manufacturer need to prove that the drug is safe before it is marketed. Eliminating the Shirley Amendment, authorizing factory inspection, setting a safe tolerance limit for the substances which are unavoidable but poisonous, authorizing standards for quality, identity, and fill of containers for food, and also adding court interjection. Within a passage of 2 months of this act, the FDA began to identify the drugs like sulfur drugs, which cannot be labeled as safe to be directly used by the patient as they were having many side effects. It also led the US FDA officials to think that there should be two categories of drug, the drug which can be given without prescription or the drug which cannot be given without prescription, which led to the two categories of the product, over-the-counter drugs and the prescription drug, which is eventually led by the Graham-Humphrey Amendment in 1951, which clearly defined kind of drugs which cannot be given safely without the medical supervision and medical prescription, and also put the restriction on sale of such medicines. The US was progressing for the better patient safety, putting in different laws, different amendments. A drug disaster happened in Western Germany in 1957. There was a drug named thalidomide, which was a sleeping pill and was also intended for morning sickness, which resulted in phocomelia in Europe, or more precisely Western Europe. Phocomelia was a condition of underdeveloped limbs. More than 10,000 infants affected by this, and approximately 40% died at the time of birth. When the news of this medical disaster or drug disaster reaches US, and the news were there regarding the role of a US FDA official, Dr. Francis, in keeping this drug off the US market, public interest arose in more stricter and stronger drug regulations, which led to Keffer-Harris Amendment in 1962. And for the first time, it so happened that now the drugs were required to prove that they are effective also, in addition to the greater safety. So now the emphasis was not only on the safety of the drug. The drug manufacturers were also required to prove that the drugs are safe and effective before they are put into the market. Keffer-Harris Amendment also led to the retrospective analysis of the drug which are already approved in the US market between 1938 to 1962 and were assessed only for the safety. They were required to be re-evaluated for the effectiveness as well. Consumer Bill of Rights was proclaimed by President Kennedy, which included the right of safety, right to be informed, right to choose, and right to be heard. This is how the various drug regulations progressed for the betterment of public safety and health. By this time, the USA was having enough laws and regulation in place to take care of the patient's safety, compliance, and efficacy. Shaken by the thalidomide tragedy, though thalidomide was put off market also in 1961, in 1965, EU also started a system of getting the product approved before they are placed in the market. They also started their work on the structured drug regulations. However, this was not the end, rather it was the beginning of an era in direction of better patient safety, efficacy and compliance. We'll talk about it in my next video. Till then, take care, stay safe.